Hi, I'm Renarta Clanton Moyd. I'm a communications specialist with the Cumberland County Schools and your host of Get Connected. During this monthly show, we highlight numerous educational topics that face today's student, educator, and parent in the Cumberland County Schools. Now, for some children, the thought of taking a test, whether it be a classroom or standardized assessment, is stressful. However, educators in the Cumberland County Schools do all they can to alleviate that stress by preparing our students for what lies ahead. Now, after this break, we'll talk with two administrators in the school system about what this test taking really means for our students and their future on this edition of Get Connected.
When you open a book, you can explore new lands, make new friends, and discover new adventures. There are amazing possibilities when you open your mind to reading. Explore new worlds. Read.
Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, it's up to you to be ready. Get a kit, make a plan, be informed. Learn how at ready.gov.
Again, thanks for joining us for this edition of Get Connected, where we're talking with Ron Phipps, the Associate Superintendent of Evaluation and Testing in the Cumberland County Schools, and Ruben Reyes, the Executive Director of Exceptional Children's Services. Ron, Ruben, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Glad you all are here. You know what, I think I may have mentioned that briefly, but it was amazing. I looked, as I was going through the script, I said, Ron, Ruben, Renarta. Ron, Ruben, Renarta. Hey, this is going to be a wonderful show. The 3 R's, you can't get any better than that, right?
I get shirts made up now.
That's all right, that's all right. Well, let's jump into talking about testing. I know testing causes a lot of anxiety for, people, I know adults, and I'm sure as well as our kids and our children as well. But what do we need to do? What do we need to keep in mind as we move forward with testing?
It does create a lot of anxiety. I think on the student end, the anxiety of having to go in and take the test, the anxiety of the teachers of worried about what the results are going to look like, not knowing how the students are going to do. The teachers do a great job of preparing the students to take the test, so it's not like when they sit down and take an end-of-grade or an end-of-course test that's the first time they've ever seen that format. And so they work all year to prepare those students for the information that they're going to get at the end of the year. The curriculum is designed, it's going to be taught all year long. The test is actually taken from the curriculum, so there's no surprises. I mean, if the teacher teaches the curriculum and the students learn the curriculum, they'll be fine on the test.
Now, is that I know, Ruben, you work with exceptional children, so things are a little different there, but is that similar? Is that the same?
Yes, our teachers are working on delivering the curriculum, and they're working with the students on practice tests throughout the year and giving them the opportunity to practice those skills, working on test-taking strategies to help prepare them for the test at the end of the year. Okay.
Now, what grade levels and subjects are tested in the North Carolina testing program?
Grades 3 through 12.
Okay.
Third, fourth, and fifth grade, which are our elementary schools, those students will take reading and math tests. Fifth graders will take a science test as well. In the middle school, you have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. They all take the reading and math test, and 8th graders take science as well. And then in the high school, there's only 3, and they're into course because they're given at the end of the course instead of the end of the year, and that is Algebra 1, Biology, and English 1. Wow. So those are the ones that are state required tests. And we also give the ACT and tests like that may be given throughout the year, but as far as what's tied to a curriculum, those are the ones that we give.
Now, I know there are probably we're going to say a gazillion parents out there who are watching and wondering, what can I do to prepare my child for this? I know that the teachers are working on one end, but what can I do at home? What are some strategies that you all can think of that would really help parents as far as helping that child?
I think a lot of parents, they don't know what to do as far as how will you help your child to take this test. The state has a website that you can go to, the DPI website, and click on the testing link, and then there are released items there where you can actually see what the old tests look like, which are the same format that we're following now. So you can look at the questions, look at how they're phrased, look at how the answers are, how you derive the answer that you're using. But again, if a parent has worked with a student throughout the year, they should be comfortable and really put them at ease and let them know that they're prepared, they should be ready to take the test, and try at the parent end not to put more stress on the child.
Oh yeah. I
mean, as my own children, we have that, and we try to really downplay it more than we hype them up, because they get enough of that at school.
Yeah, you're right. Now, when you say downplay it, I mean, I would say downplay it, but then also getting the child in bed on time,
Right.
making sure they're eating breakfast that morning
Yes.
of, because that's the worst thing in the world, to be ready to take a test of some sort and then you're hungry. I think that's just, or sleeping.
Right, yeah, and I don't mean that to downplay that it's not important, but downplay the where they're so hyped up with where they're going to be too nervous to go in and take the test. But yeah, key is to get a good night's rest the night before, have a good breakfast, so the student won't be groggy, because the test could last as many as 4 hours. It just depends on which test it is and how long that child has. And so they should be prepared coming in. And the parent can play a role in that and help that child have a good morning, which in turn would give them a good testing day.
Okay.
And during this course of the school year, teachers are typically practicing. They'll have benchmark tests that they'll utilize, or progress assessments that they're doing. They also provide them with opportunities to do the Scantron or bubble sheets. That way they kind of get familiar with the process, so when they go in on test day, it's not the first time that they've seen a test in that type of format.
Okay, that's good. Now, you know what you mentioned earlier, where parents can go on the DPI website and just kind of get a basic idea of some of the questions that have been asked in the past. Could you share with us maybe a few, just give us an idea of what some of the questions look like?
Well, I think a parent not being involved in the school, and if you have a parent that's not really worked with a child throughout the year doing their homework, they may not see the type of questions that a student has brought home. When I was in school, I can remember you would have a math problem, 5 times 5 equals blank, and you would have to put in 25. Now we don't have what we call naked math problems. They are actually word problems. So it may be that Renarta has $5 and bought 5 puppies. How much money did she spend? Or multi-step math problems. So you have to read through. It may be she had $25 or had $50. How much change did she receive back? The state website, excuse me, actually has released tests. They're not just test items, but it would be the entire test that was given. Might be 2 or 3 years ago, but it would be from question 1 to the last question on the test. So you can see how the whole test is laid out. Wow. So that's for all the EOGs and EOCs. The integrated in the course test.
Now let me ask you this: what happens if a child does not pass the EOCs or EOGs? What then?
The EOG and EOC is just one part of a child's grade. That is not the be-all test that's going to decide if you pass your grade or if you fail your grade. Okay. It does count in the overall the grade that the child gets at the end of the year. In high schools, the end of course test, they count 20% by state board policy of your final grade. So if you had a child that is on has a 70 going into an end of course test and doesn't do well on that, if the converted score is below a 70, then that could pull the child down below failing. But that's just one test that the student services team or the IEP team that Ruben can refer to, they'll look at that as being one part of the student's grades, along with their test scores, the tests they've had all year, class participation, projects. The end of grade test is just one of those. So that and Ruben can talk about how you would do that in a student services team.
Okay, Ruben?
Well, typically, when a student, if they do not do well on an EOC or an EOG, they go looking at student services team or the IEP team. They'll review that as part of the child's progress as a whole. For students with disabilities, what they're looking at is how they're progressing on the curriculum, grade-wise in the classroom. They also look at their performance on their IEP goals and objectives. And they also look at the EOC or EOG scores, and they take them as a whole to determine as a group what the next step for the child is, whether a promotion or retention is appropriate. And I think a lot of times parents who have children who've been in the system for a long time, they remember when they were called the gateway tests, and that they did have a lot more weight relative to whether or not a student was promoted or retained. But since the change in the state board policy, it's just become a portion of the whole decision, not the final decision-making factor.
And what he said about the gateways, you may have parents who have students who were in school several years ago where we did have the gateways. That was 3rd grade, 5th grade, and 7th grade, and then you had the graduation requirements. You had to pass that EOC. But the state took all those away. So what may have been in place 4 or 5 years ago, that's not how it's done anymore.
That's good. Yeah. Now, you know what, let me just ask you this. What do you do when you have a child that comes home and they've not done very well on it? And they may be a very bright child, maybe doing really well with their schoolwork, but just didn't do too well with that test. How do you as a parent kind of, keep that child encouraged?
That's difficult as a parent, I'm sure. And when you have a child that really excels all year long, maybe even has A's and B's all year long, and then comes in and makes a level 2 or level 1, which that's our levels are 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 and 4 pass, and 1 and 2 are not. But a child that makes a level 2 and has done well all year, to just encourage that student that they've done well. This is just one test, one measure. What you've done all year is the body of your work. So don't get discouraged. But we do in North Carolina allow the opportunity for retest. So we will give that child a remediation period, normally about a week long, and then they'll get to take the test over in a different form. It won't be the exact same test. It'll be the same subject matter, but it'll be a different form.
And how much further, like once that test and you get the results, then what is the wait period between that before the retest?
The schools will scan the night that they scan, or the day, whatever time of the day it is. They'll get the results back, and immediately the next morning they'll start remediation. Oh, okay. And a student normally within a week's period will start the retest. Okay. So we try to give them as much time as we can within that window. And the retests have been very successful. We've had about a 30% success rate of students who failed the first test that passed the retest. But I think the key is to the remediation, the work that the teachers can actually take. And like with Ruben's group, I know with the IEPs, you have a real specific goals and objectives to meet. After
IEP, I hate to stop you, but explain, because I know we're EOCs, EOGs, IEPs, so what is IEP?
An IEP is an individualized educational plan for a student that is in the Exceptional Children's Program. Okay. And an IEP may be written for a student that has a specific disability of how that teacher is going to address that in the classroom. Well, on the end of grade test, and end of grade tests are grades 3 through 8. Okay. End of course tests are grades 9 through 12. Okay. So whether it's an end of grade or end of course test, then each student will get their own individualized report which shows what weaknesses you showed and what strengths you had. So if you're my teacher and I do not do well on the test, you can bring me in for remediation, focus on, say, goals 2 and 3 because those are my weaknesses, and really pinpoint where I need to have some attention and help me for the remediation.
Good. It enables the teachers to look at even not only the broad goal, but the specific objectives that they've not mastered. And then what they, at the school level, what they do is they tend to group students based on the students who've had difficulty on specific goals and objectives. That way they can focus almost like a laser in terms of focusing on those specific goals and objectives that they've had difficulty on.
All right, that's good. Well, you know what we're going to do is take a break, okay? I'm getting anxiety over talking about all this testing, so we're going to take a quick break. All right, don't you go anywhere. Stay put for more Get Connected.
I'm a single mother of 2 kids. I work a lot. We do miss a lot. He dropped off for a whole month. Sometimes I would talk to him and he wouldn't even turn around and look at me. I just get frustrated because in any way that I talk to him, it just doesn't go through his head. I didn't give up because there's always hope.
Give your teen the boost they need to graduate. Call 1-877-4A-KID or join us at boostup.org for tips and advice.
Take my hand and start a brand new day. And together as one we'll start to see some change.
Underneath everything we are, underneath everything we do, we are all people. Connected, interdependent, united. And when we reach out a hand to one, we can influence the condition of all. That's what it means to live united.
We can all be more energy efficient. Use energy-saving light bulbs and energy-smart power strips. And turn off electronics and appliances when not in use. Learn what you can do at energy.gov/tink.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Get Connected, where our guests are Ron Phipps, the Associate Superintendent of Evaluation and Testing in the Cumberland County Schools, and Ruben Reyes, the Executive Director of Exceptional Children's Services. Now, Ron and Ruben, we've had some good conversation about testing. You've helped ease my anxiety. Over the break, I was able to kind of breathe. So now let's get into something else that we didn't get to touch on, and that's the North Carolina accountability model. Sounds overwhelming. What exactly is it?
The North Carolina accountability model is a combination of results that are published at the end of the year to determine the effectiveness of a school. It's not all testing. For example, in a high school, you have your end of grade test scores are one part of the accountability model. The dropout rate is one part of the accountability model. The number of students enrolled, or the percentage in college prep, college tech prep, all of those come together to determine a composite score for a school. So when we say accountability at the end of the year, it's not all about just what the test scores were. There are several different factors in the accountability model, and that will be changing at the end of this year.
Oh, really?
The state will be going to a new model beginning with the 12-13 school year.
And tell us a little bit about this new model.
Probably a lot of people have heard about Common Core, a lot of talk about Common Core. With the new curriculum, obviously, as we said earlier, the tests are derived or developed out of the curriculum. So North Carolina traditionally every 5 years or so will modify the curriculum. And one year it might be reading, the next year it might be math, the next year it might be science, and next year social studies. So it's like a rolling every year you have one curriculum change. This is the first time in the history of North Carolina that all the curriculum is changing. So from grades K through 12, going to the Common Core will be a new curriculum, which in turn means that we have new tests to go along with that curriculum. And in order to roll a new test out, then we have to field test those items to make sure that they're valid, quality items to put on an assessment.
Now, field testing, tell us about that.
Field testing is something that we had in place a long time ago. Probably the last 5 or 6 years, the field test items were embedded on a regular test. So if a test had 80 items on it, 70 items may have been real items that counted towards that student's score, while 10 of them were field test items. So they were ones that the state would put in to see if they were quality, valid items that could be used on later tests. But being the way we did the curriculum every 5 years, we could add a field test in every once, or field test items in every once in a while. But next year with us rolling new tests out, we don't have the opportunity to do that. So the whole month of April is going to be the time that we do field tests for the new Common Core. So we'll be doing that the month of April and then go into our regular testing in May.
Now, you know, with all of that in mind, something that comes to me is, with us being in such a transient community, what happens to that child whose parents have just transferred into this Cumberland County schools? You know, they may be military or whatever the case may be. What happens to that child as far as testing and all these new things that we're doing? Right.
Now, when a child comes in, we have a 10-day makeup window. So if we started testing May 20th or whatever day it might be, any child that came in within 10 school days of that date would then also take the test, whether they've been in North Carolina or not. If they're enrolled in a North Carolina public schools, we're required to give them the test. Under the Common Core, I think that will help, particularly if they've come from a Common Core state. The curriculum that was taught in that state would also be what we're teaching in North Carolina, so we would be on the same curriculum and teaching the same items.
So what you're saying as far as Common Core is concerned, not all states buy into the Common Core.
Right. I think there were 44 originally. So if you went to Florida and you were in 5th grade math and then you transferred to North Carolina, both using Common Core, you'd be doing the same thing.
Great.
Where now North Carolina has their own curriculum and every other 50 states have their own curriculum. So really it depends on what month you came in with what was being taught. So I think the Common Core is going to be good. I think it'll be better for parents to understand, and it'll be more of a universal type curriculum that we use.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Now, with that in mind, since all our students are expected to take these tests, how does that work with our Exceptional Children's Program?
Well, for students with disabilities, the majority of them take the standard EOG or EOC assessment. But we do have a small population of students who do take alternate assessments. In the state of North Carolina, we have what we call an Extend 1 and an Extend 2 assessment. The 2 at the end of Extend 2 refers to the percentage of students that typically take the test. So for the Extend 2, you're looking at up to 2% of your total population, and for Extend 1, you're looking at 1%. Okay. The Extend 2 assessment is very much aligned to the standard assessment that most students take. The language of the test is a little bit simpler. And instead of having an A, B, C, D answer choice, they only have an A, B, C answer choice. Okay. So it's a little bit modified. The Extend 1 assessment is designed specifically for students with significant disabilities. So these are typically your students that are nonverbal or have significant cognitive deficits that prevent them from taking a standard assessment. Mm-hmm. This assessment is very prompt driven by the teacher. A lot of times they're using response cards and things of that nature, whereas your standard assessment, they're getting a booklet and then they have a answer sheet, whereas with your Extend 1, it's a lot more interaction.
Okay, so those are some of the modifications that would come along with that.
Well, that's they're modified tests. They're totally different standards.
Okay. Now, you know, I'm not going to try to. I'm going to ask this. I'll put this out here, and you can help me because you know I told you I have to do this on a very simple scale.
Yes.
IEP. We discussed what an IEP.
Yes.
504 plan. And the LEP or an LEP.
Yes.
Would it talk to us about those?
Well, a 504 plan is a plan that's developed for students who have some diagnosed disability, not to the extent where they need special education services. Typically, these are students who have some sort of major life activity like walking, breathing, talking, or even learning that are impacted by their disability, but they don't need a special ed teacher delivering services to them, so to speak. What they more benefit from are accommodations or changes in the environment or changes to the testing process that allow them to really show their true ability levels. Okay. And then LEP are typically for students who are they're limited English proficient, and so those are students who have been identified as limited English proficient, and then they have specific goals and a plan that are developed for them as well.
Okay, that's good. Well, it's good to hear because you get the basic feel that regardless, all of our children are going to get what they need as far as their testing is concerned, and we'll get, you know, an even playing field.
Yes.
Right, and the accommodations that they receive those all throughout the year. So that's not something that's just rolled out the morning the test is given. So those students are comfortable with those as well, and the teachers deliver those in the classroom. So that happens all throughout the year.
That's good. Now, you know what, Ron, let's talk about testing results. Mm-hmm. How does Cumberland County, how are we stacking up here?
We always compare with the other larger counties as a benchmarking to see how we are. If you would go back probably the last 7 years, everything that we have administered, middle school, elementary school, has gone up. Our reading scores are up, our math scores are up, our science scores are up. The high school subjects, that's a little bit different. Probably 4 years ago, we gave 10 end-of-course tests. The state then eliminated it down to 7. Now we only give 3. There's been a large cutback by the legislature as far as what tests we administer. The classes still go on. The teachers still give their assessments, but we don't give a statewide assessment. But we compare well with the state when we look at those as well. The fall testing that took place back in January, just to give you an idea, when we looked at those results, our English 1 scores were up about 3.5 points, and that's compared to the year before. Our biology scores were up 7.5 points, and our algebra scores were up 8.5 points. So we always want to be going up. We don't ever want to be going down. But already at the state average or above, and at the average with the other counties that we want to compare with. And then the other area is the dropout rate. I know a lot of times when people think of testing, we just talk about test scores. Right. But the state released a dropout rate in January, and the dropout rate for Cumberland County was 3.1. I think the state average was 3.4. So again, being the lowest level that that's ever been, and the graduation rate being at the highest level it's ever been, the teachers in the schools are doing a good job of keeping kids in school and then watching them through graduation. So all of it ties together. I mean, that's part of the accountability model.
That's good.
Yeah.
I was about to ask you to what could we attribute, you know, this doing so well at this point. But I guess our teachers getting in
Absolutely.
there and doing that hard work with our young people and getting them where they need to be.
And I think it's like our departments work so well together, and the curriculum instruction and just the whole central services, everybody pulls together to do what we can to support the teachers and the students at the school. So it's not siloed where, you know, Ruben's group with the exceptional children might only be focusing on that. Everybody works together, and I think you see the benefit of that.
I think you see a lot of schools working together. You know, I think, you know, most people may see it as one school trying to outperform another school, but really within our system, our schools work together, and they're pooling resources, and they're sharing ideas about how the schools who have traditionally performed really well are helping other schools in the district, and sharing those ideas as opposed to kind of hoarding them and saying, you know, this is what we do at our school. They're sharing more, and I think that's been evident in the scores.
It's been very, very transparent the last few years.
That's good. That's
it is.
Good.
The scores are out there. You know, anybody can look it up online. So we share with the principals how everybody's doing, because if I'm at a school and my reading scores are down, I can look at a school similar demographically to mine and find out, well, what did you do at your school to get the scores up? So a lot of collaboration together.
Well, I applaud our educators for doing that, because it's all about our young people and getting them where they need to be, and, you know, sharing.
Right.
Sharing. Now, you know what? I'm looking at the clock on the wall. I see our time is ticking down, but I want to ask you this. What is the long-term vision for the North Carolina testing program?
The long-term vision, we'll see the beginning of that next school year.
Okay.
With the introduction of the Common Core, which the teachers are being trained on now. They'll spend the rest of this school year being trained over the summer, and then when they come back, whether it's July for year-round or in August for the traditional schools, they'll all be rolling out the new curriculum. Then, of course, with the new curriculum comes the new testing. So we'll be providing training all year long to be prepared for that. There is a big push to go to online testing. Now, when a student sits down and takes a test, it's a paper pencil.
Yeah.
And I see your reaction.
Yeah.
The students are ready.
Is this where you get any automatic results?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's not as soon as you click the button.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been in those situations. That's anxiety.
Yeah, it is.
To wait for the results to pop
But now we did Reed Ross. We did it at Fuller, we did it at Massey Hill this fall, and those students took tests online, and the feedback from the students were, we don't want to take paper pencil tests anymore, because they sit at the computer. It's the same test that you and I would take sitting at a desk, but they're able to actually log on to the computer, read the question or the selection, and answer the questions, click a submit button, and then it's over with.
All right. Ruben?
And I was just going to say, you know, and that's been part of the Race to the Top initiative in technology, working over the last 2 years to ensure that all of our schools are wireless and ready to engage in these online assessments.
All right, let's hear it for technology. Yeah. Woohoo! All right, well, you know what, gentlemen, thank you so very much for sitting in with me and talking with us about testing and evaluation. Really appreciate it. I have to have you back, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. And we'll rename the show the Triple
R.
R.
3 R's.
All
Yes.
right, all right,
Thank you.
all right. Well, on behalf of the Cumberland County School System, we want to thank you for tuning in to this edition of our show and for giving us a chance to help you get connected. Until next time.